What are the commonalities among leaders who sustain excellence over an extended period of time?
All right, Mikaila, I was telling you before we hit record that I've had guests who are in their 80s on this show, but I've never had somebody who was in their teens. So, as the youngest member, and you probably hear this all the time, but the youngest guest on the Learning Leader Show, I wanted to say one, thank you and welcome.
Thank you. And I hope that I represent my age well. Maybe you'll have more teas
I'm
in the
not trying to
future.
put all that pressure on you. I just was, I vividly remember the day I was, so Shark Tank's one of my favorite TV shows, and it's one of the favorite shows that we watch as a family. And I'm sitting with my wife and our daughters, and we're watching, and your episode popped up, and it really, you have this magnetic quality about you that we were drawn to you and your story and the way you told it. And so there are people probably watching this now who have not seen that one. Um, and so I'd love to first dig into your story a bit because it really inspired me. And when I saw the email come from the team that you work with, I was elated and very excited to get the chance to talk to you because I remember that time very well. Um, you got stung by a couple of bees, I believe, when you were young. And I think that's where I want to start. Can you take it from there about what you learned from that moment from when you were stung by bees when you were young?
Yeah, so I, like a lot of other people, have been stung by a bee. For me, it was when I was 4.5, and they were both within the same week. So I was kind of expecting to get stung by bees for a while. Just I thought that was a normal thing, and I was terrified of them. And so I just reacted as probably most kids would. I didn't want to be around bees. I didn't want to be outside. And for our family, we're a pretty outdoorsy family, and so that was a little bit concerning for my parents. And they encouraged me to do a little bit of research on them. And doing that research, it was mostly picture books and animated videos, but I learned that one, the bees are really important to our food supply. So I learned that without the bees, I can't have the fruits and veggies that I love to eat. And I think what made it so real for me was that they use examples of things that I eat every day or my parents drink every day or just things like that. And then another thing that I learned was that they're actually in danger. So that there are things that are happening in the world that's causing a decline in the amount of bees. And I had no idea. I I think I just that sparked a lot of I wanted to learn as much as I could about the bees after that. And so I continued reading those picture books and watching those videos, and I decided that I was going to do something to help save them. I wasn't sure what I was going to do, but I wanted to figure out how I can help save the bees or do something small to help save the bees. And initially, it was a little pollinator garden in our backyard that our family built. And so we had an area for butterflies and an area for bees. And that was my first way of helping the bees.
Wow. So let's fast forward a bit. I believe you also found a recipe. Was it from your grandmother that you could use? I don't want to try to explain it. Maybe I'll have you explain it. But what did you learn from your grandmother that then helped, I guess I could say, launch your business?
So what I learned from my grandmother was a cookbook recipe. And
Yeah.
so she sent me a cookbook. It was actually from the 1940s.
Wow.
And I remember the covers being so raggedy and the binding falling off and the pages were yellowed and there were ingredients like lard in some of the recipes. So this is a pretty old cookbook, and we were looking through, just thumbing through some of the pages, and we found a recipe for flaxseed lemonade. And my dad tried making it. I thought it tasted really good. And I thought, what if I take honey, which I just learned that the bees made, that honeybees make, and I sweeten my great grandmother's recipe with honey, and I could do a lemonade stand. And that's something else that I can do to help save the bees. And so that's how it first started out. The first batch was not great, but after a couple tries, and my dad also was writing down each ingredient change that we made, and my mom was like, these counters are messy, there's honey all over the counters in the kitchen, but we found a recipe that actually tasted good. It was mint, flaxseed, and honey lemonade, which is pretty uncommon, I guess, for a lemonade stand. And we started in front of my house, and then I signed up in local business fairs.
And eventually, we'll fast forward a bit, though. You, I assume, apply to be on Shark Tank, and this is where I felt a personal connection to you, as I'm sure people from all over the world who have seen the episode, especially ones you feel even tighter when you're watching with your family. And I'm sitting there, and our daughters are excited, my wife's excited, I'm excited, and I see this young, energetic, really intelligent and thoughtful leader, you, describing your business. And it seemed like you owned that room, which I've watched that show for many years, and there are people who have who have a lot more experience in life than you, Mikaila, who fall apart. They're so nervous they can't even talk. And yet when you get up there, it was like just another day. At least that's what it felt like from a viewer's perspective. Can you first take me inside your mindset as you're preparing to go on stage, national TV, all of these sharks in front of you, and yet it to the viewer it seemed like it didn't even phase you.
I think what made my episode on Shark Tank different was because I had been preparing and looking forward to that moment so far ahead of the show. And I think that I always say that I was a mix between being really nervous and being so excited as well. I was nervous because there were a bunch of millionaires and billionaires staring at you like this. And then I was also really excited because I this was a huge opportunity for my business, and for I'd been working on my business for a while and also working on my pitch for a pretty long time too. And there were months of preparation that came before the actual show, and even after the show before it aired, that most of the Shark Tank audience doesn't get to see. But for me, it was meeting with my math teacher and my parents to go over percentages and different numbers of the company. And it was also coming up with a pitch, but practicing in front of family and friends and other business experts and get reviewed on our pitch and edited afterwards. And then it was also a lot of asking for advice from other people who have been on Shark Tank or other people who have companies and that we had available that okay, I'm sorry. But it was asking for advice from other people who had either been on Shark Tank or who had companies who were available to speak with us.
I think it's a great reminder to all people that to have a couple things that I take away from that, Mikaila, is that you use the combination of positive energy and nerves for good. But part of the reason why you were probably so excited is because you were so overly prepared in a number of ways. Practice, right, in front of others, working with someone who understands the numbers extremely well, like a math teacher, uh, rep after rep after rep. There's so much we can all learn from that. Asking other people for advice who had done what you want to do. If you just think about those few things, that alone could be such a learning for people and whatever it is that they're trying to do. Of the importance of preparation, asking for help, seeking out experts in specific areas. It seems, how were you able to have an understanding of the importance of that at such a young age?
I think I just realized that I was learning something. So
Mhm.
most of the things you just mentioned, I know now and I can communicate that now. But when I was that age, it was just a project that I was able to work on and a lot of people who were excited about it as well. And that's what made it so fun was because not only was I representing B Suite or my company, but also this would be reflecting all of the people who have, pitched in along the way. And I think I probably didn't realize the importance of the situation then, But now I realize that that was a great opportunity, and I learned a lot from the show and pitching, and then also practicing for that pitch.
Did you have?
And we got a deal and an
Yeah,
investment.
right. I was going to say, did you have a person or two in mind that you really wanted to work with?
Yes, so we found the advantages of each different shark. We researched them, we figured out what were their investment tendencies. And for example, Miss Lori Greener, she's the queen of QEC. This could be a chance to be online because at the time we were only in a couple stores in Austin and some in cities other than Austin, but still in Texas. And so we realized, okay, this could be a way to get our product out nationally and not have to go through each store in each state. And then, for example, Mr. Mark Cuban, it was that has sports teams. He's like head of Dallas Mavericks, so potentially that could be getting the product into the stands and like having a whole different access to NFL and different sports teams and a partnership through there. So it was we really were open. We needed an investment because we wanted to scale. We were still producing in a commercial kitchen in Austin, Texas, but we realized that each shark had its own benefits and could bring something different to the company. And Mr. Daymond John was the one who invested. And so he has an amazing brand and like could use his influence and his brand to also promote our brand.
So he invests $60,000. What has been? How has Damon been as a mentor for you since you did the deal with him?
So I think one thing that's amazing is how he can manage so many different roles of being mentors and being a CEO and a public speaker, and then also have time to communicate with small businesses like ours. So if we have a question or if we need advice, then we can text or call. Sometimes he can answer. Sometimes he says, I'm in a meeting right now, but I'll call you as soon as I get out. So we are able to communicate with Damon John pretty quickly, and I really like that. For on the show, I think one of the criteria was that he wanted us to get into C stores because that's what he was working on. And so after Shark Tank, we were able to increase our distribution to not only the Whole Foods in Texas that we were in, but to Whole Foods all in the Southwest region and also the region. And we are still growing from Whole Foods to many different chains today.
Wow, that's amazing. What was it like the moment you got the expansion with Whole Foods? I have to, because I there's these checkpoints in these moments that a lot of people strive for but maybe never get. And so I'm wondering, how do you guys have regular celebrations, or you're like just another day at the office? Like, what's your mindset when you achieve these markers and checkpoints of success?
I think it's just another day at the office
Really?
because there's just so much going on. And when we have a big team compared to where I started. It's not a family run company, but we still have a small team and we still are we have our hands full. So
Hmm.
when we have an opportunity that we can take advantage of, or someone reaches out and they say, we'd like to carry your product in our store, we celebrate because it's another step of the company, but it's also just something that we've been working towards for a while. And so for Whole Foods, we actually got our product into Whole Foods before we went on Shark Tank, which was one of the reasons why the sharks probably valued the company. That increased the value of the company. And so Whole Foods didn't come from the usual going to a sales team talking to the store buyer, but going to Whole Foods actually started with me doing workshops in front of their store. So I would do workshops in front of different restaurants or schools and organizations, and then also some Whole Foods locations. And while parents were shopping for groceries, I would bring a trifold full of bee facts and some bee friendly seeds, some soil, and some pots. And I would teach about the bees, how they're dying, how you can help save them. And then kids would be able to plant their bee friendly plants and flowers. And for Buzz Week, which is a big thing Whole Foods does, the original Austin location said we'd like to carry your product for our Buzz Week. And this was maybe a month after we had just gone into our commercial kitchen and went through the whole ordeal of bottling the product. And so they said, we'd like to carry you. If you're in bottles, we'd like to carry the product. And we could say, yes, we're in bottles. And how many cases do you want? And originally they said, oh, we only want 3 or 4 cases. And my mom was like, you're going to want a little bit more than that. It sells out pretty quickly. And they didn't want to be stuck with product that wouldn't sell. And what was so funny was half a week later, they actually came back and ordered, I think, double the cases of the previous order. And that's like the product flew off the shelves of that store and a couple other Whole Foods locations then.
Wow. Back when we went to school, what is it like for you? Do you go to school? Are you homeschooled, or what do you do now?
No, I go to a school in Austin.
Yeah.
I mean, right now it's virtual.
Right. But
So,
before we went virtual, what was the setup for? Like, I have to believe, like, you have to be a celebrity in
no.
Austin. I would imagine, given the fact of everything that you've done, what's it like for you in school with friends and the juggling act between schoolwork and your social life with friends and
Mhm.
running a business?
I think sometimes when kids interview and ask me questions, they think, oh, because you have a business, you must be like famous on campus or things like that. But I'm not sure. I don't think business is something that makes you instantly popular rather than like being on a varsity sports team or something like that.
Huh.
So for me, I am I'm not popular at all. I just have my friends and each friend has something that they're interested in. So I have one friend named Lorena who's writing a book, and I have another friend named Matthew who like founded the Austin Climate Coalition. So I mean, I'm not popular. I just would say that my group of friends are pretty interested in what we do, um, and so it's been like that since middle school, and now I'm in high school.
I mean, I immediately think of myself as a parent and think, what did your parents do? And I need to read whatever book they're writing on parenting. What was it you think about? And they're still obviously actively doing this, but
Yes.
what are their daily ways they teach and they model leadership and they model good behavior? Because that's something I'm fascinated about. Because when I think of you and the friends you just mentioned, that's not really how I was. I feel like you're at a level that a lot of us could strive for. And so I'm curious, what is the way it's like your parents are, what they teach you, how they parent you? I'd be really curious to learn about that.
I think one thing every day is keeping me humble. That's one thing that they parent me on.
Mhm.
So, like, I still have to do chores. I still get checked on those chores, and then also like I don't know. I think at home it's family, and then for business that's separate. And so they are still having me do chores and like be a good older sister or a younger sister and things like that. And then when I started my company, they were also bringing me what expertise they knew. So not neither of them had experience in the beverage industry, but they still helped teach me what they knew. So my mom was the one who decided to dress me up in a bee suit when I was selling out of my stand. And my dad was the one who had me like make a budget when I wanted to upgrade from a handheld lemon squeezer to an electric one. And combined with a lot of research, we were able to start and grow a company. And so my mom now works full time with me in the bees, and my dad handles the ops, but he also works at Dell. So, I mean, they've honestly they have contributed so much to me and the bees, and they still are, and I'm so grateful for them for that.
Wow.
Grateful to them for that.
Sure. I would imagine. You got to meet President Obama and introduce him at a big event. And there's some really cool pictures out there. What was it like to meet President Obama?
Kind of surreal,
Yeah,
I think,
I could guess
because
that.
we talk about him in class, and like to actually go and meet him the first time, and then the second time, and then the third time was crazy. And it was, I mean, by the third time we had a fist bump
I was just say you're
and
like old buddies now.
a little bit. I mean, not as much as I just thought it was crazy how I got to go visit the White House and then go do a public speak with the former president as well. And so for me, Miss Michelle Obama has been an inspiration of mine because I think she's like so well balanced. She's a public speaker, she's a mom, a first lady, she has a nonprofit, she's an author, and she first invited me to the Kid State dinner. That was the first time that I visited the White House, and there was a like surprise guest, and that was the president. So we like shook hands. He couldn't really talk, but he came around the room and shook everyone's hand. And the second time I was invited was for the White House Easter egg roll. So this was after Shark Tank, and this was actually while we were rebranding the name from B Sweet to Me and the Bees. So it was a pretty big time for Me and the Bees. And so we took the opportunity of being invited to the White House again to relaunch the brand. So there were 5,000 people that were coming in and participating. I think it actually may have been 3.5. 34? Okay. 3 3.4 thousand. And so they were parents and kids who were all coming to do activities and also tried the lemonade. And so we had our new branding. And then the last time and most recent time was right before his term ended. And so I was invited to speak at the United States of Women conference in Washington, D.C. And so originally I was just going to do a little breakout session and like talk about my story or do a little panel. And what happened was that the speaking engagement kept on changing. So I kept on having to practice different things. And we were like, why do they keep on changing what I'm going to say? And so I think there's one call we were sitting in the office with my parents. My dad was on his call. My mom was talking to one of the team members there. And she said, we were trying to find a speaking engagement or something that really fits you. And we thought you'd be the right person to introduce the president. And we were like, what? Introduce the president? Oh my, we need all hands on deck. We have such a short time frame to prepare a speech. But that was also crazy as well.
Wow. And you were named by Time Magazine as one of the most influential teens a couple years ago. Have to be another surreal moment, I would imagine.
Definitely. I think also for time, and then also the root named me one of, I think, like 100 top Black youth that are doing good in the world. For those, there's two reasons that those are amazing. One, I'm so honored that I am like awarded those things, but also because I get to see other people who I met or
Yeah.
just encountered or who I'd like to meet in those same lists. And some of them are like famous actors or activists and people who I look up to. And it just goes to show that you can make change no matter the age.
I think it's one of the I just spoke with a previous guest about this, but one of the cool things from a networking perspective, you hear that word and it sounds really bad, but one of the ways to meet fascinating people is to do really good stuff in the world. And just like you said, it's probably opened so many doors because you have been so focused on creating an excellent product that does good in the world, that other people like, they're willing to buy. Whole Foods picks it up. Daymond John wants to give you money and be a mentor and help you run your business. That because of your, I would imagine, intense focus on doing great work and creating an awesome product that also helps people, helps animals, all of that then has opened so many doors. And I think instead of people thinking like, oh, I'm trying to cold email or cold call to get in touch with somebody, if I focus on doing something excellently, that could be the door opener to so many cool opportunities. And it feels like you're a living, breathing example of that.
I think, I agree with that
Yeah.
statement that like you can do something excellent and that's a great way to network. I personally never, when I hear of networking at business conferences, it seems really like intimidating. And
Right.
I didn't think I was a really good networker because I mean, I just couldn't see myself as a good networker. And so I was actually talking with my mom of how do I network in my company, and she listed off a bunch of things that I didn't realize that I do, but I do when I'm talking with people. So the first one is that I love first I love talking with people and asking questions, and when it's conferences or different events, I still want to meet people and make connections with them. And so that's the first thing. And then the second one is that I also try to either teach or learn something with everybody who I interact with. So sometimes it's a cool app that lets you connect with more people digitally, or sometimes I'm learning something from them, like their story or how they got started. But I enjoy that. And then another one is that we find something that we have in common. So even though we don't do the same things, there's something that we have in common, like saving the bees or the environment or just a bunch of different things that we're like, oh, this is a pretty cool conversation. What can we both do to like connect and get started on helping that? So I think it can be a lot simpler. Networking can be simpler than you think,
Mhm.
and it's something that, yes, sometimes you're in the mood to do it, sometimes you're not, but when you are in the mood, great things can happen.
When you just seem to me to have this insatiable curiosity to people and life and ideas in general. Where do you think that comes from? Have you always been this way? Did you learn it from your parents or grandparents or friends? Like where do you think this curiosity comes from?
I don't know. I think part of it is when people are like, "Wow, you've done so much at a young age." Like
Hmm.
that part's kind of always added,
Hmm.
or it's like when I was your age, I was doing this, or I had no idea of this, or if I was your age, I wish I knew this. So I think for me, it started with just wanting to learn as much as I can now and then also in the future, and then teach it to other people my age.
Hmm.
And also just because I enjoy it. I think you talk about curiosity. Humans are naturally curious. This is something that I've realized with in school. Sometimes that's you most people don't really like going to school. It's kind of like, oh, I have to go to school again. And I think it's because it makes curiosity more of a chore or a task. And I realized when you're the one who's like when you're learning something that you actually want to learn, you memorize things so much better and can pick up things so much easier. And I mean, the same thing goes with reading. If it's a signed book that you have to annotate so many notes, it's just harder to focus on it. And so I think that's the same thing where it comes with learning. I just went out and sought my own knowledge and tried to learn from people myself, but also in school too.
And part one of the other mechanisms for sharing what you've learned and teaching others is writing a book, and you have done that. Your book titled "Be Fearless, Dream Like a Kid," and I published my first book this year, Mikaila, so we have that in common, both publishing a 2020 book. But I'm curious, what was the process like first for you to get your thoughts out on the page so that it could become a published book?
The sitting down staring at the blank page wasn't very fun. I think there's just so much that happened between coming up with between getting stung by the bees and now. And so originally I wrote the book because I get so many opportunities to speak and tell my story and give advice, but I can't accept all those opportunities because I'm a student and I also have me and the bees. And so I saw writing a book as a way to reach people who I normally wouldn't have been able to reach, and that's what I'm hoping that it does. But just having to think of what message do I really want to convey? How do I want to say it? What's the age that I want to speak to? And remembering things that happened a while ago was a pretty hard part. And so it took lots of months of talking with parents. Also, I realized that I couldn't do it alone, so we had help from Miss Bryn Steven, who's also a writer, to kind of put my ideas in a way that's more storytelling.
Mhm.
And it was a long process, but we have a book now. We have a way to reach people all around the world, and hopefully it gets translated into different languages. And so Be Fearless is part memoir, part business playbook. We kind of had to decide between which two we wanted to focus on, and we compromised and did both. So it's about my story of starting and growing, and my family, and like going on Shark Tank, and then also some things that people don't know, like how I got funding from NFL players in 2016. So some people don't know that aspect of me and the bees. But then it's also realistic business tips that anybody of any age can learn. So for kids, it's how to make a budget and like how to set goals. And then for adults, it's how to dream and think like a kid when you're growing a business. But there are business lessons and different tips sprinkled throughout the entire book.
I saw a quote you said about your dad in relation to goals, and maybe you can talk a little bit more about this. You said, "I definitely have a lot of goals, but as my dad always said, it's important to work step by step and take each little goal one at a time." Is that like how is that how your business is operated and how you operate as a leader of a
Mm.
business? But the goal, like I am fascinated by goal setting and achieving or exceeding goals or missing goals and how you learn from that. So what have you learned from your parents, from people that you've surrounded yourself with when it comes to setting and either achieving or missing goals?
So I think one thing that I've learned is for that goal, there has to be like passion, hard work put into achieving it, and then also a story. And so when my dad said you have to do it step by step, he meant take that big goal that everyone says is impossible and put it into different little steps that you know you can achieve. And I mean, for me, he explained it kind of like unlocking a game level. Like you have to do one step in order to do the next. And so I've realized more recently that it also includes like doing a change of habits. So not only reaching that thing, but you have to change your process in order to get there. And that's why I guess it said, like, don't just set goals, set habits. But for now, and as it applies to my company now, there are goals and we're just tons of stuff is being thrown at us. So we have to identify what's something that can help us reach that goal. And sometimes we don't even realize we should be setting goals for a specific thing until after someone points it out to us.
Wow. So um I've read and try to implement this myself, but one of the key things when it leads to excellence is the ability to say no. I
Mm,
would imagine this has to be really tough because you're probably offered some incredible opportunities,
yeah.
but you can't say yes to all of them. So, what is your process for making decisions when it comes to yes, we should do this, or no, we're not going to do that?
So I agree. Saying no is one of the hardest parts for me.
Hmm.
I think what helps me decide whether I'm going to say yes or no is just other commitments. So things like school and like family, those come first. And so when making a decision whether to accept or decline an amazing opportunity like a great pitch opportunity or going into a store or a presentation, I have to check with my teachers and say, am I going to be missing something important? Or check with my family and see if we're planning something for that section of time. And then also whether I think I'm up for it or whether I think there's too much on my plate.
Hmm. I mentioned to you, Mikaila, that I love studying a wide variety and diverse set of leaders from all over the world, different industries, different levels of experience. But one thing I want them to have in common is that they have found a way to sustain excellence over an extended period of time. You've done this, and I'm curious from your perspective when you think about how you operate, as well as the mentors and leaders in your life, like Daymond John, like your parents, like others who have helped you. What have you found to be some of the commonalities among leaders who have sustained excellence?
I think one of the commonalities, I actually have a quote, and I
Okay.
think this can be applied to your question. I say, don't be discouraged by life's little stings. Get back up and spread your wings. So it's a little bit of a bee pun, but it also has real life applications. So for business or whatever industry, you're going to have challenges. And I think what one of those traits from those leaders that you interviewed is that they didn't let those challenges get in the way of what they were doing. So it's hard work and then also not letting those stings knock you down, but continuing.
That's such good advice. And I love the saying. Did you just come up with that? I've heard you say it before, but how did that come about?
It came about, it was me, my mom, and one of our interns from a really long time ago. And so we were just, I think we were trying to find a closing thing for a presentation to close it off. And so we were inspired by like the Dr. Seuss books and how he says his things. And we were like, okay, what's a bee pun? Is it going to be related to business? And it just came up. I think it may have come up one word at a time, but it came up, and I really live by that quote, and the business does too.
It's brilliant. It's really good. I wanted to tell you one of the quotes that I read in preparing for our time together, Mikaila, was from Satya Nadella, the CEO of Microsoft. And to read or hear these things, I just can't imagine the feeling it have. So I wanted to ask you. He said you are, Mikaila, one of the most impressive CEOs I've met. She's applying her passion and ingenuity to go and change the world. When you hear the CEO of Microsoft saying that about you, what goes through your mind?
Just wow. I was able to meet him at We Day, which is a big event for my generation. And so I met with him. I actually went on stage with him, and I learned his story of starting his company. And I thought that was his story was really cool. And
Mhm.
as a CEO, I'm sure he's met so many other CEOs. And
Yes.
so for me to like leave that kind of impression is pretty cool. I'm really, I don't know. I'm really grateful for that. But I think what was cool was how when he read the book, he actually read it with his daughter. So he didn't just read it by himself, but he had a kid come and read my book too. And he was like, we both enjoyed it. So that was pretty cool as well.
So I'm going to ask one selfish question. I have to, Mikaila. I mean, maybe all these are, but I'm curious. My daughters have started a wide variety of businesses making slime. The current one is tie dyeing stuff, which is now all the craze. A lot of people
Yes.
are doing tie dyeing shirts and a bunch of
Selling
other
them on
things.
Depop.
Oh yeah, they're all over the place, and so I'm trying to teach them little things, but they're far more likely to listen to you than they are to me. What advice do you give to people who are looking to start a business, and not just start one, but sustain one and grow one? What advice? What are some of the few pieces you would say to them?
And this is for young people, like
Yeah,
people.
yeah,
Okay. So the first one that I would say is, ooh, I would start with having a company with a mission. And I say
mhm,
this for people my age, but also people of any age who started a company have a
absolutely.
mission or a social cause. And that's becoming more more in demand now, but for me, it was something that I started with, and I think when you have a company, you should start with. And there's two reasons for that. One is because there's now becoming a increase in conscious consumers, so people who are looking behind labels and seeing what does this do in the world? What good does this do in the world? Is this made ethically, or like is this a clean label? Is this sustainable? Things like that. So they're actually going and doing research and avoiding products that whose values they don't agree with.
Mhm.
So that's one thing. And then the next thing, the next reason why you should have a mission and a cause is because it provides something bigger to motivate you, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
So like when you have those things in business, you have a cause to keep you going. And sometimes that's greater than just making profit, because you can make profit from multiple things, but your company and the fact that it's helping save the bees or do whatever you're actually interested in, um, that's something that will keep you going. And also make sure that your cause is authentic to you. So that's the first piece of advice. So it's kind of long. But the next one that I would say is to take advantage of like the resources that you have, specifically tech. And for us kids, that can be using social media to market your brand or find your aesthetic of your brand, or using Canva to make logos and business cards for free. And so what else was I going to say? Oh, free invoice templates and free business plan templates. Those are something that if you have an internet connection, you can access. So like take advantage of that if you have it at home. If you don't have it at home, maybe public libraries or resources that you can use in your area that where you can access those.
So, Mikaila, we talked a lot about all of the growth and success you've had with Me and the Bees up to this point. I'm curious, could you share a couple things? One, where are you now? Some of the growth, and then as we look forward, where do you hope to see Me and the Bees and you and your company years down the road?
So that's a good question. So right now, Me and the Bees is we have 5 different flavors, and they're all fun and functional. So we started with that mint, honey, and flaxseed, but now we have prickly pear, ginger, half and half iced tea and lemonade, and classic. And so they all have honey and flaxseed in them. And one thing that we're still doing is we are still kind of changing our recipe. So we recently reformulated all of our lemonade and reduced it to 25% less sugar, but still with the same taste and like the same great flavor that we started with. And so we were able to do that without compromising like the original family recipe that started with my great granny Helen. And we've also continued to scale. So we've grown to over 1,800 stores across 40 states. And we are currently looking for additional points of distribution and flavor ideas and ways to fulfill our goal of being America's favorite lemonade.
Love it. Thank you, Mikaila. If there's anything I can do to help keep spreading it, I'm happy to. I meant to talk to your mom a little bit at the beginning. I'd love to do anything I can to help out. Where would you send my viewers and listeners to learn more about you online?
I would send them to my website, which
Yep.
is meandthebees.com. So that has everything. It's kind of like our portal for the product, the book, our social media, a blog, and just everything related to Me and the Bees. And then also my social media, which is at Mikaila's Bees.
Got it. Perfect. Mikaila, again, thank you so much for investing your time with me today. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I'd love to continue our dialogue
Yes.
as we both progress. I'm excited to see what you do next.
Thank you. And thanks for allowing me to be a guest on your show. And thank
Yeah,
you, everybody, for listening.
absolutely. Thanks so much, Mikaila.